It says we're both on. Yep. So I can see everything. Yep. Okay. All right, babe.
Can you hear?
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can see you. I'm gonna invite Mel as promote to panelist. Good morning, Mel. Hi. You're muted.
Said new work from home low. I'm gonna put makeup on right now while we're getting ready. I just got home.
Go ahead. Yeah, I would just so we're
Okay.
broadcasting. So if you want to just like turn off until you're ready.
Yes. Thank you.
See you soon.
Thanks.
Okay. And let me grab some water real quick. All right, back. Okay, and let me know if this works. Okay, I'm gonna test out the background.
And Debbie, did you see the little lines that said that you could share it on social media? I don't see that. Remember when you said it's like more or something, but I don't see it.
More. Down here. Okay, so live on Facebook. I'm gonna go ahead and click that.
Okay.
Here's where you want to post your video. Should I share it on our event or on my timeline? I would think the event. The event is Diversity Design Episode 3. Next. Okay, I think we should be good.
Okay. I'm gonna get a little more water and I'll be right back in 1 sec.
Okay. Good morning, Ashley. Can you hear me? If you can, you're on mute.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, I can hear you. Good morning. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. I am going to go ahead and see if I can share my screen with.
How do I get these controls?
Okay. Alexa said we could do this. And let me just like move this over. How does that look? Can you guys see this on the side? Okay, so I'll leave this up until we start at 9:03. Cool. The only thing with this is that I can't see if Daryl's waiting in the Hangout. Can you see that, Allie?
I can see, and I do not see him, so I will text him.
All right. How was everyone this morning?
Great. We have one kid going back to school this morning.
Cool.
Oh, really?
Yes.
How was that? Going back into the rhythm of that.
What's that?
How was that, getting one ready and not the other? Was it a good process this morning?
One at a time. That's actually fine. One at a time is good. I have two in middle school, so they're teenagery.
Ah, I feel you. My little one's in middle school too.
Okay.
It's very teenagery right now.
My son's starting 6th grade, and my other one never got to finish the rest of 6th grade or start 7th grade. So, but it'll be nice. It'll be just the ladies at home during the day. So we won't be hearing sound effects just going off. My son, he doesn't know he's doing it. He just makes noise as he's working. So
That's great.
it'll be nice and peaceful. I love the room. Is that the room you work in all day at your house?
Me?
Ash? It's beautiful. Yes, the light.
Oh,
in
yes. Thank you.
it's so
Yeah, just hanging out with all my plant friends.
I love it.
It is a sunroom?
Beautiful.
Unfortunately, that's also where my cat lives, and so she's often in the space, demanding attention.
I bought now it's 3 plants that I bought during quarantine. One is still going. But I really tried. So I think that, I mean, we'll see. There's still hope, but if I can keep it alive, then I guess that there's still a chance. But if not, I think I'm gonna have to just bite the bullet and get fake plants.
No, you've got this. You've got it. Get something
And-
that's low light that can take some water, and you should be good.
But it's even the things that you know, like succulents, I think get the rep that they're very low maintenance, but actually they're not.
Oh, they're not. I'm horrible with succulents.
So
They're so, it's like if you water them too much, they're fragile, and then if you don't water them enough, it's not good enough, and I can never strike that balance with those.
and so watching all of the designers, we have a few here in Richmond, like on their social media, they'll post their flowers and like their plants look so good and healthy. And I'm just like, maybe one day. So let's see. And so Daryl and Lavisha. Lavisha said she'll be signing in 5 minutes.
Okay.
That was a few minutes ago, so
Excellent.
hopefully that link worked fine.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, I can't believe we're almost to the middle of the month coming up here. Oh my gosh, how did we get this far? It's already way into fall. My kids decorated for Halloween. Oh, my son did a pretty good job. He put boards up on the windows and the skulls up everywhere. They went to the dollar store and picked out some things. It was really cool.
Nice.
Yeah. So I went out of town for my birthday to see my girlfriends, and I came back and it was all spooky. So it was fun.
That's lots of fun.
Yeah. So it's kind of cool that they want to start doing it all themselves. I like it. Now that they're older, I'll let them.
Yeah.
Except, well, when they were little, they did the Christmas tree, and my daughter put all of her Barbie clothes on the tree one year. All down low. It was so cute.
Like a Barbie clothing skirt at the bottom of the tree.
Perfect.
That's super cute.
Oh, I see Daryl has hopped in.
Awesome. Hey, Mel.
Debbie, I don't see how to make him a panelist.
Let's see.
Hi, Ashley.
Hi, Mel.
Hi, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Good,
There we go.
good to see you.
It's good to see your face.
Okay, Daryl should be moved over. And for all of the attendees who have joined on, we have a few. We're going to wait until about 9:03, 9:05, and then we'll get started. Good morning, Daryl.
Morning.
How are you?
Awesome.
Awesome.
Hey, guys.
Morning.
Hey, is Ashley here?
Yeah, he is.
Oh, wait. Oh, I'm sorry. I was looking too high.
Sorry.
Hey, Mel.
Hi, how are you?
Good.
Good.
Good. Hey, superstar.
Hi, Daryl. How are you?
I'm awesome. How was vacation?
Too short, as always.
Yeah, looked like you had a good time then.
I did. I got to see my best friends. We've all been buddies since middle school, so it's really nice to get together.
Cool.
Yeah.
Cool.
Let's see. Okay.
It looked really fun. You went to, did you go, where were you?
We went to Wekiva Springs. It's in Florida, just outside of Orlando, and it's just beautiful. It looks like you're in a tropical jungle, and all of a sudden the water turns from a coffee or tea color to this beautiful crystal aqua, and it was just beautiful. And we met the most amazing people. It was like they were just placed. We were all placed together. It was a magical day. It was really.
It looked fun.
It was really.
I was jelly. All right, so we're just waiting on Lavisha. And
Yep, and it's 9, so we'll get started. Would you say 9:03?
mhm.
Perfect. Oh, I have the right mug today. Oh,
Always good. I actually have not had coffee yet, so we'll see. We'll see how I roll.
And I think I've had too much, so just be careful. Just when I'm rambling because of the extra coffee, just say, hey, Daryl, what's that?
We're singing.
I can't imagine that ever happening.
Yes, you can. You of all people can imagine that happen. Oh, you were being sarcastic. Thank you.
Oh, goodness. Oh, I think
One more.
is,
Lavisha is saying, can you hear me?
yes. Nope, we're going to
No.
have to over. So, Debbie, are you able to see that?
Let's see. Oops. Here we go. She's promoted to a panelist now, so let's see.
She's in.
Lavisha? Good morning, Lavisha. How are you?
Muted.
Good morning. How are you?
Good. All right. So we're going to give it about another minute and allow more people to join in, and then we're going to get started. Well, it's 9:03, so everyone's here. So let's go ahead and get started. We want to be respectful of everyone's time. Let's see. Here we go. Okay, so thank you all for joining us on our third episode of Diversity Through Design, Addressing Social Movements. My name is Debbie Arredondo, and I am your monitor for today, as well as our chapter's Vice President of Forums. Helping me today with Q&A is our President, Ali Allred. Thank you, Ali, for helping me today. And I wanted to give a special thanks to our episode sponsor, Baskerville. Baskerville actually just recently designed and moved into their new firm location, which is located in the James Center. So we'll look forward to bringing a virtual tour in the future. So please stay tuned. Thank you, Baskerville, for being so supportive through this series and being an ally to our community. I also want to remind you that you can all donate to Teens with a Purpose. You can find the link on our website or in the email that you received when registering. And I also wanted to share that in being completely transparent, that our IIDA board switched gears from COVID webinar planning to where we are now, which is diversity through design, after the public killing of George Floyd and the many others that came before him, and unfortunately still happening. These marches, these protesting, and the brave voices that are speaking up gave us pause and allowed us to reflect on how our chapter could better serve and support our community, and to also acknowledge our professional lack of diversity on a larger scale. So we have a lot of work to do moving forward, but our hope is that this 5-episode series can lay the path of awareness, can lay a path of empathy, and gain perspectiveness as we amplify our Black voices and invite other minorities and non-minorities to the table to discuss how we can make the necessary steps of becoming a more diversified A&D community. A big thank you to all of our current, our past, and our future panelists who have been stepping up and have been so brave to open up to their journey. We hope that everybody who is listening, everybody who follows us on social media, that you continue to follow us. That's really where we post a lot of the opportunities to engage and support, to give ideas of what we can do better. And so that's where you can join in on the upcoming events, panels, and ways to participate. So today's episode is about addressing social movements. And we'll hear from our guest panelists today on how they address social movements within their own lives, at their firms and the communities that they represent and work in. So our goal for today is to also understand how architecture and design not only affects society on a higher level, but also on a personal level. So impacting just the ways that our communities in regards to social design can be. So we're going to unpack how A&D can and will continue to rethink infrastructure development and better ways to serve our community. And please remember, in the chat box, you can raise any questions and we'll go ahead and answer those as we can. So let's go ahead and start. I'm going to stop sharing. And let's go ahead and start with Ashley. So Ashley, can you give everyone a little brief description of who you are, where you work, and addressing what social movements means to you?
Okay. So my name is Ashley Montgomery. I am an architectural designer and planner at Hanbury in Norfolk, Virginia. And so I guess getting into your question, what does social movement mean to me? I consider myself a designer that works at the intersection of environmental and justice. And those are kind of the social movements that I engage with and I work around. I believe architects have a vast impact on our built environment. And so I feel like, you know, we have this link, we have this connection to our cultural atmospheres as well as our built environment. And so it's important for us, especially as architects, because we have so much, and designers, we have so much impact on our built environment, that it's important that we take notice of the atmosphere of our culture that we're in, like such as right now, and really start to think about, well, how can I engage in this conversation that I'm able to make an impact to where what we're feeling as a culture and what we're feeling as a society can be implemented into our built environment to then resolve issues that we're having, or to help carry out conversations so we can heal in a better way.
Thank you. And welcome, Daryl. Daryl, can you give us a brief intro of what you do, where you work, and what addressing social movements means to you personally?
Good morning, everybody. So I'm Daryl Henderson. I'm an architect and an interior architect. I work for Hanbury here in Norfolk. And I'm also an educator. I think it's always been important that what we do is to hand off the experiences that we've had, the successful experiences, and sometimes the unsuccessful experiences that we've had in our growth in our profession. So in the 30 some odd years that I've practiced architecture, I've done a myriad of things, from planning to vertical architecture to horizontal architecture to interior architecture. And that's the entire spectrum of what we do as architects. We deal with horizontal, we deal with vertical, we deal with the interiors of it. And it's not, though we've falsely separated them into these little pockets, they're all the same. It's about us building environments that enhance the way we live, work, play, and pray. So that intersection of a social movement is really the reflection of what our values are. Cities are the reflection of the values of our community. What's important? What is our culture? What is our humanity? So the buildings that we create do exactly the same thing. It's a reflection of the values of our community. What is our culture? What is our value? And then when you go into the building, which is essentially the building, that introduction from the outside to how you get there, to how you face it, to how you open it, to how you intrude in it, is a reflection of our culture and our values. So the movements that are happening right now are really an expression of the damage to our culture and our values. And what do we have to do? We have to reflect, we have to restate, we have to reorganize and redo what we believe is valuable to us. We have to reignite the things that tie us together and the things that we believe in. And our architecture, our spaces, our places, our connections have to reflect that in their expression, in their statements, in their culture, their identity, their materiality, and their openness. And that's a broad statement, and it's something that we haven't done, but I think that this time is an opportunity for us to start doing it.
Thank you, Daryl. Mel, welcome.
Good morning.
Good morning. Welcome to the panel. Can you please give us a brief description of who you are and what addressing social movements means to you?
Okay, well, good morning, everyone. I'm Mel Price, and I'm one of the founders and principals of Work Program Architects, or WPA, in downtown Norfolk. We're coming up on our 10th anniversary next month, and thanks, it's exciting. And our mission has always been to strengthen community through a collaborative design process. We have always been a really hands-on firm. We got our start actually doing volunteer work as a group of friends throughout the community. And so what supporting cultural movements means to us right now, the past several months, it's been very hands-on. So we've been working in neighborhoods all throughout the city. We've been working with the Open Norfolk program. And so what it means is, one, I think, taking the time that we have together. We've been working from home and having the hard conversations about all of the inequities that are happening in the world, and having those conversations in our weekly meetings, following up at all hours of the day and continuing that conversation, and then immediately pivoting and being nimble and translating that into our work. So for Open Norfolk, it means supporting our small women-owned, Black-owned businesses first, providing assistance there first. In other projects, it means, focusing on those communities, getting out and actually hands-on building in the communities, creating a culture where people want to volunteer and help out. So I think we've pivoted to trying to address that hands-on in the field.
Thank you. And Lavisha, welcome this morning. Lavisha, can you please give us an intro to who you are, where you work, and what addressing social movements means to you?
Yes, good morning, everyone. I started off in the design field as an interior designer. I went to VC interior design program, and I practiced interior design for 3 years. Got to work alongside a great architect out of Pittsburgh, and he kind of coerced me to look into architecture a little bit further. I wasn't sure, so I went to work for a contractor for 4 years and decided it was time to make the step. And I went to Hampton University for a Master's of Architecture. And since 2010, I've been in the architecture field, practicing architecture and interior design. I recently, for the past 3 years, I've been at DJG Architects in Williamsburg, Virginia. Due to COVID, I took a break because I could not manage school full-time, as well as working, being a mom, a wife, and also studying for exams. So I took a brief pause. So I decided I wanted to come back to where I initially got my start in architecture. So I'm sitting in KEI Architect's office right now so that I could not have any photo bombs from my children. So, but I wanted to just talk about what it means to me as a designer. When I first started out, it's amazing how things come full circle. Mr. Henderson actually was working at KEI when I first decided to begin my career in architecture. And I was a ball of fire. I was angry, I was mad. I wanted my place at the table because no one looked like me other than the people that I worked with. When I went to client meetings, it was just me normally. And so coming out of school with that green, title and still trying to learn, I realized that I needed some people that related to me. And so I started venturing out to a lot of women in architecture. And so for me, the social movement has been not only having a place in the practice and practicing architecture and learning and becoming an asset to the firm I'm at, but also I wanted other people that look like me to know that you can work in this field and you can do well, and that this is a field of inclusion. Once you get in this field, you meet so many wonderful people. So I wanted to be that catalyst for young women of color and brown races to let them know that, you know, this is an opportunity. So that's what I strive to do in my career as well. So that's what social justice means to me as a designer.
Thank you, Lavisha. I want to ask Ashley a question. So Ashley, you've shared in the past panels that you take a holistic approach to design. So can you share what community-based design is and how you practice that into your work?
Yeah. So I guess the way I like to incorporate holistic design in my work is just really being open to multiple perspectives, understanding that yes, the client is my client, but there are other people and other entities that are going to be impacted by a project, right? And so for me, community-based design is really just opening that book and really allowing yourself to engage and have conversations with every person or element that can be impacted by the project or the design that you're putting forth. So your client might be asking you to build like a downtown skyscraper, but really peeling back the layers of that and investigating, well, how is this helping the community that's here? And is there displacement that's happening? And are we building this on a filled-in wetland, right? So it's not really able to support the structure there. So really just kind of pulling back all those layers of a project and really seeing how that project is impacting that space, that place, and the people, and how will that happen in time. So really looking at the architecture over time really helps me to engage and really digest what the community and what everyone is going to, how everyone's going to impact from the project. And that's kind of how I like to incorporate a holistic kind of design to my planning process at Hanbury.
Thank you. Does anybody else on our panel kind of incorporate those strategies too as you're working on a project when it comes to community design?
I think for me, as I said, when I'm looking at architecture, I'm looking at the built environment and I'm looking at all of the connections, right? It's not once you get there, it's how you get there. So it's starting with who is it? Who is the community? Who are you designing for? So if we're really talking about community-focused design, we really have to understand the community. You also have to understand the community's drivers. You have to understand the challenges the community has. And once you start to identify that, then you create nodes that reflect and respond to those community challenges and respond to the community. So much of what we've had problems with, so much of what we're dealing with right now is the lack. Now, and this is really an important, for me, an important part of the way I see the world, because I see the world as this cup that you empty, not a cup that's full. And once you've emptied it, there's some opportunity for you to redo it, put some more stuff in it. So when we look at our communities right now, we're saying that they are to some extent, because diversity is an interesting word. Diversity is really about a characteristic. Inclusion is about welcoming. So our
Oh no,
be diverse, but our community. Yes?
Say that again? We can hear you now.
I'm sorry, what didn't you hear?
You left on, while we talk about diversity, really it should be inclusion, and then
yeah, I said, so that's the point. Our communities are diverse at whatever level you want to call diversity, but our communities aren't inclusive. Our communities are vulnerable. Our communities are afraid. Our communities are diverse and separate. Our communities aren't welcoming. So that introduction between that diversity and that inclusion is part of what our architecture has to start responding to. It's saying that we value the inclusion of our differences, and those differences help to motivate, educate, enhance our environments, as opposed to creating the walls that say, because you are this particular type of person, particular ethnicity, particular cultural identity, that those can't mesh, that they're not welcome. And it's the same thing that happens in our organizations. We talk about diversity, but diversity, again, is a characteristic. You can bring more diverse people in your organization because cities and buildings and all of these other things, communities are still organizations. But if you don't include their value into the organization, into every facet of the organization, you've just got characteristics. You don't have community. So when we're thinking, to me, when I'm thinking about design and I'm thinking about community engagement, it's from who the communities are, the connectivity of those communities, the opportunities for connection, enhancement, engagement, and inclusiveness, and then the expression of that architecture in everything we do. As I said, from how you get there to where you collect, to what you do it in, to how you introduce it into the buildings and the environments that we work in.
Right. And I know that we had some discussions offline, but that kind of brings me to how important it is to do the research before we even start these projects, right? So you talk about inclusion and how, yes, you can have all these different diverse characteristics, but how do you, our panelists today, how do you guys do that work? Does that look like town halls? Does that look like that research phase of including the different types of communities to make sure that those needs are checked off when you are doing a project, like checking the pulse, I guess? What does that look like for you guys in your firms on projects? Mel?
So I think for us, it really means taking the time and sometimes convincing your client to give you the time to just go into that community in which you're an outsider over and over and over again and listen. And when we're working at a neighborhood scale, it means walking and biking and being a face that people get used to seeing, waving to people, saying hello, trying to dive down to the next layer of questions. It's, we can research all we need to or want to in books and maps and GIS, but there's no replacement for just being there and listening for an extended period of time before coming to any sort of conclusions. And every single project, I'm surprised by the assumptions I've made that are proved wrong by just taking the time to listen and wait for things to come out in the process. And so I think that's the most important thing. Take the time, become a silent part of the community, listen, observe, try to understand, then ask the questions to make sure you truly understand.
Yeah, I would add to Mel's point that make no assumptions. You would, because even if we think we're part of the community may not think you're part of the community, So it's really, as I say, it's the emptying of the cup. Make no assumption, ask questions, be a part of it. Let the community tell you who they are as opposed to you defining who you think the community is.
Mm-hmm. Well, Daryl, I'm going to go to a question to you. So as a leader of Hanbury's interior architecture practice, how do you find ways to connect and understand the demographics and social norms on projects? Do you find there are increased opportunities to examine these topics when we're in current climate such as we are now?
So real talk. Part of diversity is about diversity of clients.
Mm-hmm.
So for Hanbury, a firm that has a broadly diverse project type, our diversity of client, to be honest with you, isn't as diverse of the community. It doesn't show you the spectrum of what is the kind of diaspora of what American communities, American culture is. So part of that is really, for me, especially as an African-American architect and interior architect, is to seek opportunities for us to broaden our client base. And then beyond that, so that's the first part of it. The second part of it is to always, regardless of the client, to ask the questions, what if? What if we? How does it respond? And sometimes, as Mel has said, and everybody acknowledged, that the client may not have ever considered these opportunities, ever considered the connectivity. Clients oftentimes are insular, but these buildings exist in a fabric, a community, a culture, an environment. And that environment doesn't stop at the walls of the building. It doesn't stop at the walls of the plan. It still extends. And your tentacles, if you're asking the right questions, your tentacles can reach out to another potential connection that the client never considered. So what we do typically is we ask questions. It's almost a deconstruction of what the project type is and what the goals are. And what we've started to introduce as part of our vision, our mission, and our passion is that the projects have a connection to our community and a connection for diversity in not just project type, but project environment. So it's really that we're scaling it back. We're taking off the top. Hanbury had a mission and a vision statement. And what we're asking now is, and this is Ashley would support that. What we're asking now is, do we really need to restate our vision, our mission statement? And should that mission statement be as one of the things that we evaluate the success of our projects on? Diversity, inclusion, changing the value structure, the statement of what our value structure is, so that when we go to our clients and we evaluate the success of our projects, we're also evaluating it relative to its social value, not just its architectural and its design value.
Thank you. Lavisha. So I understand that, speaking of mission statements, that your firm's mission statement, it notes that you all strive for community enhancement. So what are some of the key elements that make community more enhanced? And from, oh, I'm sorry, same question to you. And what are those steps that we should be taking more as A&D?
Well, as Mel kind of started out the conversation, you have to get engaged with the community. One of the things that the firm DJG strived for was getting involved in your community, joining civic groups, joining boards, learning about what's going on in your community. And for areas that you're not involved in, that you're not engaged with personally, you can always attend their planning department meetings, their economic development team meetings, and actually see what's being proposed and what's going on. When it became a personal development, what I would do is just talk to the residents that are in the impacted areas and just ask them how they feel about it, and let them kind of just tell you. If you just sit and allow them to talk, they will provide you with a platform to start with that you would never have began to imagine of what this is going to look like for the people that are impacted. And that includes people of color, many of the residents that live there. And so when I started to get involved in the community engagement process and a lot of the civic groups, I started to realize that people want their voice heard. Everybody wants a fair chance at what's going on in their community. And so you also want to ask the hard questions that many of us don't want to tackle. What bothers you about this? Why don't you want this to happen? Do you feel like your voice matters? Do you feel like your voice does not matter? And allow them to tell you these things, because one of the things that you have to be able to do when you're presenting to these communities, they have to trust you that you're going to look out for their best interest as well. And I think one of the things that we typically as designers sometimes forget is that we are trying to do what's best for everybody that's at the table. Your developer, the government, the administration, the people that are going to be living with this design. You want to include everyone. And so one of the things with being involved in a civic group, you know, it has its pros and cons, because if you're involved in that community, you're going to hear about that design once it's done and everybody else can go away. So you have that type of ownership where you want it to be successful, right? And that kind of gives you something to hold on to. So one of the things that I see now with our current climate of diversity is that conversation is happening. Whereas, as we talked about, Debbie, when you're sitting at the table, you want to be careful who you don't want to piss off. Who do you want to build these relationships with? Who's going to come back and be upset with me if I say it? But now I can actually say, well, what about the Black community? What about the Indigenous community? How is it going to be impacted? Do they talk to each other? Is there racism currently in your community? Now that conversation is a little bit easier to diverge in, whereas then before you had to choose how to enter that conversation because you didn't want to come in like you're creating an issue. And so that's one of the things that I learned, that if you get into the community and you build their trust, and building their trust doesn't mean you just say a few good words in a little dog and pony show. You have to show up and do things to show them that, look, I'm vested in this too. But you're going to have to also support me if I'm going to stand up for you. And so you have, it's called relationships. I remember when I started school with the iPod, that took you away from relationships. You put your earphones in and you don't talk to anybody. Well, now you need to do that. And when you talk to people, that also gives you that catalyst to hold them accountable and say, you told me this is what you wanted. This is what you needed. So how can I best serve that? So this current climate, although with all the negative impacts, I don't want to take away from that because we have so much more work to do. But the positive in it is that it allows us to have the conversation and take that veil away that everything's okay when it's not, and allow us to include those problems instead of trying to sneak them in through your design. So that's where I currently see the importance of being involved, not only in your community, but in other communities.
Right, right. It's a process, much like design, you know, there's lots of layers that go into it. And I think if you are genuine and you come into those communities, and I think a lot of great things can be done from that. Thank you, Lavisha. I'm going to go to Mel. So Mel, as someone who has worked in the last decade on projects where trust is compromised, and you may seem as an outsider, how do you overcome this hurdle to create a successful outcome for all?
So I think first, don't take on a project you don't believe in. I think it's really important when you start understand all of the ramifications of a project and effect on how it affects the community, and get to know the community before you join that project. I think as I said before, it starts with listening and being present. And from there, I think it's pushing for actual true community engagement where you have the time to earn trust in order to hear people's point of view. And then you have space in the project to completely pivot and change in order to meet the needs of the community. I'll give a couple of examples. I think we believe really strongly in this kind of true public process where our projects have the ability to, you know, we can start out thinking we're going this direction, and by the time we've spoken with people, we can pivot to meet their needs. I've watched a lot of public process in the last decade where architects and designers stand up in a town hall and they put up posters and they'll say, you know, put stickers on the image. Do you like this picture or do you like this picture? And it's tough because it's fake in a way. You're asking people who haven't been trained in design to make aesthetic judgments and then just check it off the box and say public process is complete. And the important question is, you know, what does your day look like? How do you move through your day? How many kids do you have? Are you taking care of grandkids? Are you driving to work? Are you taking public transportation? Like, walk me through your day. And so then the important questions are, you know, do you have enough room for your family in this home? Do you love spending time outdoors? Do you want to hang out on a front porch? Do you like that image because that space has room for your family to gather? So I think you have to dig deep. Once you've earned trust and you can have that next layer of conversation, and you start to put forward actual designs and give actual choices, you need to pivot to, it is no longer your design. You want to get to the point where it is our design as a community. You become part of the community. And then when things go wrong, I think you have to stick your neck out there and take personal responsibility and put yourself and your reputation on the line and say, I take responsibility, I hear you, and I'm going to fix it. I also think these days, I don't think any conversation starts without acknowledging past injustices, and it's hard, and your clients don't always want to allow you to start a public meeting with talking about the past. But I have come to find that if you don't talk about the bad things that have happened in the past, and we don't all acknowledge that as a group, you really can't move forward. There's no sugarcoating it and just talking about a happy future until you all talk about really fears, because it's people fear change, and you have to acknowledge what happened, earn trust, and then move forward together.
Thank you. I want to remind all of our attendees that if they have any questions, to please put them in the Q&A chat feature. We do have some questions that came prior that we wanted to ask our panelists from our team. So gentrification is a powerful force for economic change in our cities, but it is often accompanied by extreme and unnecessary cultural displacement. So how do we increase the value of properties in areas that suffer from prolonged disinvestments without displacing those who are often Black or Hispanic or other minorities? How do we do that? And that's open to anyone.
I'll start. And again, we're talking about past injustices. Some of these communities were planned to be, there's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. Some of these communities were planned to be communities with discomfort, communities that were placed so that the economics of the community never would have been successful, where they were defined to be separate. So what do you do? And so the problem with gentrification is that you're now trying to go into a community because the values are low, because you can't afford to go in the communities where the values are high. And then that changes the economics of the community. So that the clear part is, one, is an acknowledgement that those communities were created because of injustice. The second part is saying that they don't have to continue to be maintained by the injustice. So before the quote unquote gentrification happens, and gentrification is a bad word for white people moving into underutilized, lower economic, typically minority communities, and then buying properties, and then as the property values go up, the people that were living in the community can't afford it. The good part about the quote unquote gentrification is that there starts to get some more influx in monies and support systems that also help the community to rise. This is really about inclusion. So what we're really trying to do is to accept the fact that when you go into those communities, when other people decide to be a part of the communities, they become a part of, not try to displace the community. And part of that is to say, it's a plan. It's not just to wait for these things to happen, it's to identify the communities that we already know existed, and we know why they existed, and start to change the attitudes and the conditions of that community so that the people in the community get to rise, the economics of the existing community get to rise, the values of that community gets to rise, and then when people come in, they're not displacing people for value, they're just adding to the value. What does that happen? It means that you have to look at work programs. You have to look at transportation nodes. You have to look at the total environment. You have to rebuild. You have to take the communities that have been downtrodden and have been planned to be separate and unequal and start to put in time, money, planning ideas to raise the values of those communities so that displacement is not necessary. It's just inclusion.
Right. And just to kind of piggyback off of what Daryl said, the main, like one of the biggest problems, and he kind of spoke to this, is accessibility and ownership, right? These communities have historically not had accessibility to architects, designers, to conversations in the built environment, to being engaged on how their built environment has begun, how it has been created, how these neighborhoods have been established. And then when gentrification comes in again, we're not a part of these conversations to then help influence our built environment. Therefore, we have no ownership. And so the value of these communities that he's talking about, it's not there. And it's because of just the lack of accessibility from these communities to dealing with architects, knowing they have access to architects, that they have access to designers, and to help influence their built environment. And then because they don't have the access, they don't get to build the ownership. And so then the cycle just kind of continues, especially for these neighborhoods that are disadvantaged.
Now, I do want to go out and look at that in two ways. So let's look at gentrification as far as what they classify it as. It's a process of renovating or improving an area, right? So a lot of, as Daryl said, some of them were set up for failure, but however, over time, they've created that environment where they're actually stable and they're not what we conceive as standards or meet the standards of those that are around the area. And a lot of times the values are lower and are looked upon differently because of cultural differences, whereas some may see this as it's not at a certain level. To others, it may be fine because that's the cultural norm in that area. But one of the things, going back to what we talked about earlier, is that if you're a part of that conversation initially, one of the things that I've learned through environmental injustice, because it can also be to take over land for new developments, for economic growth, for different industries. So not just about making it pretty, but what's better economically for that state or county. But one of the things that I looked at was, what are the assets currently in that community? Because you can bring it up, but if the people can't sustain it, you're kind of making that ball easier to push them out. So one of the things that we started to look at was, what currently does that community have that they can build upon and grow from? And as Daryl said, it's the work program. How can we make them better and make them sustainable in these communities so that when we do improve it, they're able to stay? But also on the governmental and administration level, things need to be put in place to safeguard those who are not able to do that. So for the people that are widows or disabled or people that are elderly, those placeholders need to be put into action administrative by laws or government ordinances, however. So it's a two levels, it's a double-edged sword there. So I do want to say that with gentrification, I do feel like sometimes it is a good strategy to come in to build up a neighborhood, but you have to look at what the neighborhood can sustain and what's already there that can help sustain it. And a lot of times people assume, because of the visual appearance that there's not an asset there. I've been to communities where there's doctors and lawyers and people that are working in community-based organizations that have degrees that are working in pro bono work to help offset that student loan debt, that are there, that can work in clinics, that can be engineers and can help with that community, but no one ever asks the question. So I think one of the things we have to start as designers is asking them, what's an asset there now? And what can we do to help those that are going to stay and sustain this community? Because one thing will happen is that you can make it a beautiful area, but if it's not sustainable, it'll go back to what it was before. So that's just something I've seen in my work.
Thank you. And I know a lot of designers from these past panels have reached out. A lot of people have reached out, just thanking us for opening this conversation. And A lot of designers, you know, we understand, architects understand we're not policymakers, but we are very much a part of this, you know, involved larger picture, right? And so how can we make the changes to better serve our community that we design for? And I think we kind of touched on that already. Lavisha talking about joining these, you know, civic type of boards, joining these town halls. Do you have any advice for our A&D community to get more involved in how they can make these changes, or what they can be better asking? We touched a lot of that already, of their end users or clients.
So I'm not sure.
Go ahead,
I
I'm
got
sorry.
And no, it's
Go ahead.
fine. I got involved in a civic group, and one of the things that was created was a Senate bill that we were able to create to help people in a indigenous community, to help protect them against industries coming in and trying to take over land. And you assume that you have to have a certain qualification to submit a Senate bill, right? It was seriously just literally going to your senator and having a conversation, and their aides will sit down with you and walk you through that process, and also talking to them about what your concerns are. And a lot of times the representative or senator in your area will help you and or direct you to people that will be willing to have those conversations. And that leads to, as one of the things we talked about earlier, was getting involved. It kind of, it's like a snowball effect. You make the first initial question, the contact, and then that contact pushes you to someone else, and then that takes you to someone else. And then that snowball kind of creates its own little concept of what you're trying to solve and what the problem is. And so I think if you just make that step, identify what you want, what the problem is, and make a step towards finding the solution, it will unveil itself to you on how you can make an impact in that community or in that project. As you know, a lot of the panelists have said, one of the things that I've heard over and over from everyone is you have to get involved. And as Mel talked about, it's not typing on your computer. That's a good intro, but you're going to have to hit the grounds and actually have face-to-face conversations. And that's not always fun. It's not always a good conversation. And acknowledge that some people are not going to talk to you, but those who do can provide valuable information. So I just think talking to policymakers, don't be afraid to talk to your senator, talk to your representative, talk to your board of supervisors, and find out what their needs are. And it also can lead to work if done properly. So just want to throw that out there.
To add to that point, I think that there's a multi-level response to how we communicate the interests, the needs, the requirements for change in the community. Social change happens at the community level, it happens at the cultural level, it happens at the administrative level, it happens at the social level. And how you communicate the need for that cultural change is changing now. And so I always use that, and Allie will notice, I always use the same aphorism as empty your cup. If you think you know how to do it, drop it. Uncouple that. Reconsider how to communicate. We know right now social movements are actually happening on social media. So we have to be, as designers, as people that are interested and involved in the movements, especially relative to the built environment, we have to get even smarter on how we're going to communicate those values and get cohorts and partners in making these movements reasonable. And part of it is just being vulnerable, and part of it is being accepting and asking people, what are your values? It's finding a group of people that believe in the humanity of these choices, these changes, and gathering them together on multiple levels, not just on the ground, but also in the media and also virtually. Because the more we communicate on those different levels, the more there are opportunities for those different communication styles to come together as a synergy and a nexus to make things happen. So without question, what Lavisha said is important. That's one facet, but there's another facet about that passion that has to be in how we communicate that importance, communicate those values, and gain acceptance for other members to be a part of the movement.
I'd like to add on to Lavisha and what Daryl said, and just urge all designers to please get involved, get yourself on boards. It's so critically important. And I firmly believe that there is not another profession out there that is as well suited to represent our community on a board than anyone in the design profession. And when we were getting to know each other and practicing the other day, Lavisha busted out a Vitruvius quote, which was amazing. But if you think about what we're responsible for, it's people's health and safety and welfare. And we have to think about economics, and we have to know math, and we have to know art and poetry and all of it. So we're this like Da Vinci complete person. Who else sits on boards who spends years in school and taking exams to understand society as a whole? So get yourself on boards, get involved. And then once you do that and you take the time to listen and you start putting yourself out there with the intelligent thoughts that come from being brought up in the design profession, you'll find that you'll be invited to be on 10 boards. And then the problem is, how do you choose things that give you energy and don't sap your energy and align yourself properly? And I think every board in this country is looking to increase their diversity now. You know, any young Black woman is going to have her pick of boards that she wants to be on. And then I think the question is, don't just jump on the first one that asks you. Ask them why they want you to be on that board, and make sure they understand you and your values, and that you align yourself with the things that you believe in. So go for it. Don't be afraid.
Yeah, I guess I'd just like to add to that, you know, leaning into what Mel said, we're designers, we're architects, we have to juggle all these hats, we have to juggle all of this knowledge, right? And that's hard, right? And so, you know, as a designer who believes that intersectional theory directly applies to architecture, and intersectional theory was created by Kimberly Crenshaw, and it's kind of about understanding the overlap of different systems, economic, financial, cultural, systemic, and being able to understand those synergies and how they play into one another. And that's directly what architecture does. And so I encourage you to break out of your silo as well. I've had a lot of success with working with marine biologists, working with different scientists, using different technology and tools to help inform the design process, which has helped me to better engage with the communities that I'm working with. So I definitely encourage you to break out of your silo and talk to other people and gain other perspectives so that you can better address what it is that you're working towards.
And Mel, I do want to, you know, thank you for pointing out, you know, definitely if you make the first call, I mean, you will have a large pool to choose from on boards and advisement committees. But one of the things that I talked about with everyone on the phone was, don't be afraid to say you don't know. That's the power that I learned going back to Daryl's point of being vulnerable. You know, I felt that as the minority, I had to always know and be and have all the answers. And honestly, just being upfront and being totally transparent and saying, I don't know the answer, but I'll be, you know, I can get back with you. And then knowing the avenues to go and get that information. So if one of the things, like Ashley said, is that comfort zone of feeling like you have to know everything, of course, as Mel said, make sure it's something that it's going to uplift you and it's going to help with your journey in this career. But if you get involved in that board and you don't know, then just say you don't know. And that'll be just an avenue that's going to stretch you to know more about that in the future. So I just want to throw that out there, because that was one of the things that hindered me from joining a lot of the boards, was not being as educated on a certain topic, or not being perfect, so that when those things came up, having to say, I don't know. So just want to make sure that if you're out there and you're young in the career, just step out, and if it's something that you feel passionate about, and if you don't know, it's perfectly okay.
Yeah, I think we, Whitney from our last panel had shared, you know, that's something that she had to learn as well. I think a lot of people coming out of college, coming out of, you know, their universities with their degrees, they feel like they have to know everything. And that's something that you kind of have to learn as the years go by and projects go under you, that you feel comfortable saying, I don't know, but I will get that answer to you right away. So I think that's great advice for our young architects and designers coming out of school. So it is 5 minutes till, and so I want to allow any time for people to get last minute questions in if they have any. And just remind everybody that we have episode 4 coming up, which is on October 20th, and that will be promoting architecture and design to our youth. We'll be talking about how are the ways that we can get involved to be a better community of A&D, to spread that wealth of knowledge of this is a great, career to go into, and how can we start to really get into, high schools and start talking about that. And then episode 5 will be November 5th, and that will be, our topic will be Community Alliance. So I want to thank all of our panelists today, Lavisha, Mel, Ashley, and Daryl, and Allie. Thank you for helping on the back end. And if you continue to have questions, please reach out to IIDA, reach out to us. We really feel that we can connect and get you the answers that you need. And thank you to our panelists. So we'll go ahead and we'll end, and thank you, and thank everyone for everyone's continued support. It really means a lot, and we really look forward to doing the work that needs to be done. So thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you all.
Good day.
Have a good day. Bye.
Bye, guys.
Bye.